Hello everyone, we're from OLLI at the University of South Dakota. We're based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The University of South Dakota is based out of Vermillion, South Dakota, which is about an hour south of here. But our offices are in Sioux Falls. I believe we're going to have quite a few people joining us tonight, so I'm really excited about this. It's going to be fun. And we are going to request that you keep your microphones on mute unless you're one of our wonderful speakers. And Mike will be running the show this evening. We'll get started. We'll give it about 1 more minute because a lot of times people log in when we say 6:30, they log in at 6:30. So we're glad to have you here.
Oh, and can we get Marlon? Unmuted, there you go.
There you go, he's off of mute, yep.
Yep, I'm just finishing up dinner with the wife on her 30th birthday and got my daughter in the back. My other daughter's coming. So
nice.
you'll have to bear with my little bears.
We can do that.
Then they'll run up a storm, but they'll be okay.
Wonderful.
As a matter of fact, less you on camera, more them.
Yeah, there you go. That's only one of them. I was only able to get one out the restaurant. My wife's bringing another one.
All right, everyone. I'm going to get us close to started here. Once again, we're with OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute in South Dakota at the University of South Dakota. We're based in Sioux Falls, which is a wonderful city. And we are very happy to have you here tonight. Right now, it looks like 37 people have logged in with us, and we are expecting more than that. We are going to ask that unless you're one of our presenters, you keep your microphone on mute. If you don't do it, we may do it for you because we know that things happen in the background. Dogs bark, planes fly over, people mow the lawn, all kinds of stuff. We are recording this evening's session, so if you do not want to be in the recording, we would just ask that you turn your camera to off. That won't affect anything except us being able to see you. We won't be able to see your name either, so we'll have a video of tonight's presentation, and people will be able to see it and watch it later. We've had quite a few teachers who've contacted us, and they are interested in showing this video later to their classes too. So I'm really excited to have everyone here. I'm going to turn it over to Mike because he is the man in charge.
Well, I don't know about that, but first of all, thank you so much to Thea and to Stacy and to all the folks at OLLI for allowing us to use this platform of yours for free. Let's give her a nice virtual round of applause if we can, because that's very nice. And second of all, you can tell that it's September as opposed to March or April, because as I watched people log in, I didn't see anybody go, well, I am pushing the button. So that's very good. We've all gotten much better. We're going to start. I'm your host, Mike Henriksen. We're going to start by introducing the folks on the panel. We'll actually have them introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their background. Then I've got some really cringeworthy questions that I'm going to ask them, but they're questions that frankly need to be answered so that we can get past those and get on to the ones of substance, because a lot of times we don't even know where to start conversations. I know I didn't, believe me. So fortunately, I've got friends that have educated me, and so we're going to continue to do that. We will start ladies first. Marcia, welcome. Thanks so much for doing this, and tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all tuning in tonight. My name is Marcia Zephier, and I am a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe here in South Dakota. And I grew up in Flanger, South Dakota, however, and that's because my mom and dad, or my dad was a member of the Yankton Sioux tribe, and my mom was a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. And when they met and fell in love and got married, they located to Flanger, South Dakota, so that they could both kind kind of start off their education careers at the Flandreau Indian School. And so I was born and raised in Flandreau. Flandreau Santee Sioux tribe is not my tribe, but I'm a lifelong resident of Flandreau and Sioux Falls. So I've been in Sioux Falls for quite some time. I'm a retired public school educator. So I taught in public schools for 34 and a half years, 33 of that here in Sioux Falls. Most of it at Roosevelt High School in Sioux Falls. And for the past 14 years, I've been an adjunct professor at the University of Sioux Falls, teaching Native American studies in their graduate program. So I'm pretty happy to be here and look forward to Mike's questions, I think. And hopefully you can get some of your questions answered as well.
All right, next off, Marlon.
Well, I'm here by way of originally California. I've been here for going on 13 years this February. I came here to play football out of Pittsburgh, California. So since I graduated in 2010 from the University of Sioux Falls, I've worked with the kids I did that for 7 years. And I recently made a career change to property management. So I work with, older kids trying to keep up paying their rent. I do a lot of mentoring outside of the schools. I do a lot of coaching. I work with a lot of kids. I just enjoy just the diversity that we have in town. I like being an example for what's here and what's to come. And obviously I have a beautiful wife and 2 kids by her. And then I also have another son as well. So my wife's a behavior nurse. So she's pretty much can deal with anything I bring home. So really, I'm just here to see what we can get accomplished and just keep reminding each other that we need each other to continue to get through this. And I'm glad we have approximately 40 people participating, and hopefully the 40 people learn and hear something and can take a message and run with it.
Real quick, I got to ask, I'm not familiar with your hometown. Is that being affected by fires?
Northern California, at the top part, yes. The lower part, not so much where I'm from. But where my son is located and my brother is located, they have a lot of smoke around them, so their quality of air isn't too good. But up where my sister-in-law's from, up in Oregon, they've been really affected. She know a couple people, places burned down to the ground, so it's kind of a tough situation over there. And my hopes that it gets better as long as we're getting better as well. Everybody's getting better, and hopefully things will solve itself. But only time will tell.
All right, awesome. And Tim, if you would introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about the group that you had up also that was kind of the impetus for this evening.
My name's Tim Hughes. Originally from Aurora, Colorado. Came to South Dakota to attend Northern State University, where I graduated. Been a high school teacher now for the past 15 years. Was high school football coach as well. Have been in youth, working with youth and that age group for many years. Mike talks about the group that I formed. Really it was a Facebook group, and it was just my way of trying to get kind of conglomeration of different people together to see if we can solve some of these problems or begin the discussion and the conversation of healing and moving the discussion along for social justice and equality, and just seeing, instead of being stagnant, what could we do to help move the ball? And so that was kind of my initial plan. And I reached out to someone like Mike, who I've known for a very long time, knowing that he was a voice that people listen to, and I really value his opinion, and he was really instrumental in helping with the group and have led us to this point. So looking forward to the discussions that take place. And as Marlon said, hopefully all of us learn and grow and can take the ball and run with it and do some good for our fellow man.
Thanks for the kind words, but this doesn't happen without you. All right, I'm going to start with some incredibly cringeworthy questions, if that's okay, because again, we got to get past these. What do we call you? Marcia, do you prefer Native American?
That's the That's the million-dollar question. I do, because I feel like, we're native to this country, so I do prefer that, but actually the federal term is American Indian, and that hasn't been changed yet. So, I kind of go back and forth between the two, especially in my class, because, when I talk about federal legislation and things like that, and how, for example, Indian education got started, all of the verbiage uses American Indian. That's the federal term. So, whoops.
We're still there.
Okay, what happened?
They just changed the screen.
Oh, okay. I was like, what happened? I prefer, actually, a native person would, if they were introducing themselves, they wouldn't say I'm an Indian. They would say, for example, my name is Marcia Zephier. I am Loda from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. So try and identify people by their tribal affiliation is best.
All right. Marlon?
Well, if my history serves me well, I think African American was kind of been brought about to us probably, I don't know, some generations ago. But I mean, I know I'm African American, but my father is Jamaican. My mother is African American. So I mean, flat out put it, I'm black. But in all reality, I think, truly speaking, American, just because I think the way we migrated over here, we all became one, and essentially they labeled it African American just because we were here and we were here in America. So yeah, I'm more so black than anything. I mean, a lot of people don't know I'm Jamaican, half Jamaican and half, I guess, American. So they don't have a true label for that, I would say, but I know I am African American. So you can call me African American or black. Either one is going to fit me.
All right. Tim?
Much the same. I have been, I think about half my life when I filled out a questionnaire it was black. And then about half my life it went to African American. And so since I checked both boxes, regardless of what it was, I can pretty much respond to either one. So I really don't have a preference.
All right. Marlon, this one's for you and Marcia, okay?
Yep.
I've got a friend of mine whose pet peeve, she's African American. She has strangers come up and ask to touch her hair. Does that ever happen to you? I'd asked him, but he doesn't have as much hair. Does that ever happen to you, and how does it make you feel?
I've always had longer hair. Just recently, I grew my hair back about, if you guys can't tell, it's up in dreadlocks now. But I've had long hair about half my life until about in high school. I cut it off. So I've always had kind of like silky, wavy hair, kind of like Marcy's probably, I guess. I have curls. So a lot of people see my skin complexion and say, how do you have curls? If you compare me to, I guess, like Middle Eastern, how my hair would be, how it's like wavy and curly, that's what a lot of people thought I was, because I was so dark with curly hair. And they're like, how's your hair? Because Tim hair is a little rougher than mine around edges probably. But people ask me that, and I never really allowed people to play in my hair just because I had long hair, and I don't like people playing in my hair unless it's somebody of value. Either doing my hair or, my mom didn't, want too many people playing in her hair just because of probably anything can happen, spread of lice or in general. But I've had people ask, and to this day, people ask me like, oh, can I touch your dreadlocks? My late grandmother-in-law, she just passed away. She obviously was white. She never really saw a black man hair like mine, and she would ask all the time, like when we had our first daughter, she'd ask like, is her hair going to be curly? Is her hair going to be straight? And for the first part of her life, it was just straight. And she's like, is it ever going to get curly? Is it ever going to get curly? Because I want to know how to do her hair, and now it's curly as ever. But yeah, people ask, and I just kind of never let them, but it didn't bother me in a way. I just thought they were curious because I had longer hair, and now I have dreadlocks, and now it's kind of like some people look at them like they're nasty, and I just look at them like they're my hair. But
yeah. All right. Yeah, it's her pet peeve because she said,
yeah.
I'm not the pet dog here.
Yeah.
Don't ask if you can pet me. Marcia, how's about you? Have you ever had that experience?
No, not one person has ever asked to touch my hair.
Okay. All right.
So,
That's
no,
good.
I haven't had that experience.
All right. Good to hear. All right. There are certain words. There's a couple of the cringeworthy ones. There are certain words that either get used all the time or don't get used at all. For those of you that don't know, and they can really change a perception. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm a sportscaster by trade. And I got to be honest with you guys. I started thinking back based on some things, again, conversations with Tim and others. I started thinking back, and as a sportscaster, all the games that I've covered, I'm not sure I've ever called an African American or a Native American or any other person of color. I don't think I've ever used the word gritty. I don't think I've used the word gutty. I use that all the time on white guys or white players. I use explosive, I use smooth, I use, are there some phrases that are pet peeves of yours, or you would like to hear used more, or hear used less, in whatever the phraseology may be? Tim, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I think being a college athlete, I know going to Northern State, the first thing that people assume is that you're there because you can play football or that you can bounce a basketball. It isn't that you had the IQ or the ability to score well on the test to get into school and to do well in school. It was that you were there to play sports and that was it. I think that from my perspective, having people identify the fact that, you're here for the same education that they're there for. Because trust me, if you're going to school like Northern State University, you're not going to Northern State to go to the NFL or go to the NBA, because people usually don't make it from there. So I would look at it from my terms. I would look at it and say, hey, this person, what I'd like to see more is the mindset that people of color are at the Institute of Higher Learning for more than just playing sports. Sports might be a way they got there. It might be a way to afford the education, but it isn't the reason they're there. And I think that's one place where you get sold short, because it's almost like if we are sitting there and we don't finish our degree by the time that our athletic abilities are washed out, that we're just going to quit because I was just here to play. When that couldn't be further from the truth. For me, I was the first four-year college graduate in my family. That meant a lot to me. To be there, to get a degree, was something that my family really imparted on me and impressed upon me, was that, you have an opportunity a lot of us didn't have. Don't waste it. And so for me, stepping on campus, football was a way to get my degree. It wasn't football for me. It was a way of getting my academics taken care of at a cheaper rate than having my parents pay for the full thing. So I think that's one place where we can really improve, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Marlon, same question.
I think Tim hit it on the head. Obviously when I went to USF, I can say this because I remember this. It was 8 colors on the team, and not that USF had any racial problems at all, but when we all got together, we all knew that we were literally, it was 8 of us, and we all grew together. And people knew us on campus as the football players or the transfer that came in from California, instead of being the guy that came in with a 3.0, or the guy that literally wants to better somebody else's kid when it's all said and done. Like Tim said, I didn't go to University of Sioux Falls thinking I would go to the NFL. I came to University of Sioux Falls because it was a better opportunity for education. And obviously later on in life, I met my wife and had more kids. I had kids and everything. But the biggest problem is sometimes players or student athletes, they're not looked at as that student first. They're looked at as like, oh, that athlete that came here to perform, and he's only here for so long. Because I can remember when I got done with actual school, I felt great, but I also was kind of worried that people was like, oh my gosh, like he came here and he played football. What is he going to do now? What is he going to do now? What is he going to do now? And that was the question. That's tough to answer, but now I can sit back and say, like, I'm pretty successful. And I was a successful football player, but football was just a tool to get me to where I am today. And I think if people can have the understanding that we're more than just an athlete, I think we'll go a far way. And literally, like, my wife, she doesn't like this, but she cringed at the fact that I got a scholarship because literally my athletic ability got me there. But she was just like, well, you just had to play football. And I'm like, yeah, but I had to play football in order to get there. And once I became, I guess, a man, you would say, I figured that I was more than a football player and I didn't have to say like, oh, I'm only here because I'm a football player. So I think if people can understand that student athletes, no matter the color of their skin, they're there for a job, and their job is to get an education first. And second, they're going to go have fun and hopefully win some games and have a career, whether it's playing at the next professional level or just have a career-based job and just love what you have for yourself. So I think no name specifically, but just trying to get to know who you're working with and who's on your team and not really having a judgmental mind frame.
Marcia?
Well, when you think about your initial question being, are there terms that we have pet peeves with, or there are certain ways that you describe white athletes as opposed to Native athletes or Black athletes? I think, in your years of broadcasting sports, when you think about the terminology that you use for, the good athletes that you've covered over the years, you would use that same terminology for everybody, wouldn't you?
No, I've consciously thought of this. Like I say, there's all sorts of white gym rats that I've called through the course of the years, even though the kid of color may be putting in just as much, if not more time, but that was never a phrase. I wasn't conscious of it.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You didn't use those terms. You only saved those terms for white kids.
Yes.
And it's unfair, I guess, to say it bluntly, but I think that I don't know why, and this is just me, when non-Native people use the word tribe, it really bugs me. I don't know. Because a tribe doesn't have to be Native American, but in our area and where we're located geographically, and our people here in the upper Midwest, it is used to describe Native Americans. And it's always a pet peeve of mine, right or wrong. People can call me out and say, hey, we're not trying to disrespect you or anything like that, but it's always bugged me. So, that's just me.
Awesome. Okay, while we're on that subject, and by the way, I saw a question pop up, and yes, I think I have referred to female athletes as gritty, and now I'm rethinking that. All right, Marcia, back to the tribe situation. We've got Halloween coming up. Why is it not a good idea for people to dress up as Native Americans for Halloween?
Well, there's two terms for that. There's cultural appropriation and cultural misrepresentation. And I think the cultural appropriation means that one group is taking on the culture or the values or the dress or the food of the less dominant culture. And it's usually the dominant culture that is doing that. And what happens is that it becomes very exploitive if you're not fully aware of that person's culture. And we've seen it for 25 years with, not 25 years, but we find, we fought to get rid of the Washington Redskins moniker or mascot. And, a lot of it was, seeing a non-Native person dressed up in a headdress with chicken feathers of every color, and not knowing that in order to receive an eagle feather, perhaps, is a very high honor that you have to earn. And also, doing the war whoops and the tomahawk chop. And, there have been studies that have shown that has been detrimental to our youth. When our youth are surrounded with that type of environment, it really hurts them, not only, psychologically, but it hurts them, mentally and emotionally and academically. And that is one of the reasons why the NCAA did away with, sports, Native American sports mascots, because we're receiving federal funds from the federal government. And they just decided that can no longer be, because it hurts our kids the most.
I found it remarkable the other night at the Chiefs game that we paused for a moment of silence of racial unity, and that was immediately followed by the tomahawk chop.
Right.
I was stunned at that.
We're not really getting it, when it comes to that. And in that end, what I'll say is that when people are fighting against that change, I would contend that they're not really trying to understand. You're not really trying. And that's all I can say about that, because people are so, I could go in and give a whole history of, Native Americans and, in the Oceti Sakowin, which is this area, and our customs and our values and our traditions and those types of things. And there is a term for that, and I can't remember what it is, when you have to explain your whole history before you get into something new, and it's exhausting.
That's the word I was going to use.
Yeah.
I imagine it's either asinine or exhausting. Both of those, I think, would qualify.
You always feel like you have to give a history lesson every single time you try and explain yourself about something.
Right. All right, Marlon, I want to go back to you too, because and I'm trying to picture the guy from California coming to the University of Sioux Falls, and again, football team has what, 100 guys, and you said there were 8 of color on the team. Yep. What was that experience like for you?
Well, to be quite honest, it didn't really hit me until like we took pictures. We did picture day. And I could, all 8 of us, I think 6 or 8 of us were transfers. And the other 2 were, incoming freshmen. And this was Tim could probably credit me on this too as well. This was at the tip of USF getting ready to transition to a higher division. And I felt like they were recruiting a different level. And they felt like maybe they couldn't go get the gritty white kid. They had to go get the kid from California or the kid from Chicago, because the teams that we were going to play down in the future, they had to see if the core of the program could play with us. And I think we all meshed extremely well. We had no problems, nothing like that at all. Our coaches did a great job. But now that I'm older and I sit back and I watch and I talk to one of my close friends, Demetrius Washington, and I can remember telling him, dude, do you remember, they having you and I, both of us move across the field when somebody did something, not because Tyler Newman couldn't do it, but because we had a different, I don't know how to really say it without being a complete jerk. We were just more athletic than them. And we were able to get to different spots. And so when I realized all 8 of us was on the team, I was just like, dude, this is like a piece of history. Our coaches probably never came across a kid from Pittsburgh, California, or came across a kid from Chicago, a kid just in Minneapolis that had different views of life. We've had kids from, Garretson or, down in Yankton, where you may have an interracial kid, but he didn't have the struggles I had growing up. And we brought that here. And now I look at USF, half of their rosters, it's broke down evenly. But I credit myself and my other compadres that we were the part of that, because now we look at it you don't go on USF football page and don't see an African American or some other kid of a different race. But now I look back at the success we had, the 8 of us that were there, we were able to be a good example for the crew that came in now. So it was. Now that like I said, I'm 32 years old, and I talk to Dimitri about it all the time. Can you imagine 12 years ago they're telling us to rock back and forth, and we're doing those things, and it's not that they couldn't tell Tim to do it or Johnny to do it, they just trusted us to do it. So I didn't feel a certain way, but now that I'm older, I know that man, that was kind of weird, but I mean, the best players play at that time, and that's what the coaches were trying to do. And we just happened to be a different color than the other guys. And like I said, nobody was racist at all, but it was just, now that I'm older, I can see that, like, oh man, that's what they were recruiting. So,
Marlon, instead of getting the gritty white kid, I watched you play. They went and got the gritty black kid, Jamaican from California. So
yes, they
there
did.
you go. You had a darn nice career.
Thank you.
Tim, you've had the unique situation of being the only one that looks like you in a couple of different situations. Let's start with coming from junior college to Northern State in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And for those of you that don't know, Aberdeen is about, what, 15,000, maybe 20, I suppose, by now. But from where a lot of you are from, it's a very small town. Here, it's the third largest town in the state. But Tim, what was that experience like?
Well, seeing as though I saw Aberdeen, I came to Aberdeen sight unseen. Had I do it over again, I probably would have wanted to see it first. But, but no, I mean, you know, much like Marlon, met a lot of great people there. It was a bit of an adjustment, but I think I went to junior college first in Utah. So that helped a lot in the adjustment to it. But yeah, it was an adjustment, but I found Aberdeen to be very, very welcoming. I found them to be very supportive. You know, it's a college city. Northern State is the school that, you know, reverberates throughout the Aberdeen community. And so I found out really quickly that they were very supportive of their athletes and of the people who go to school there and work there. So that was a great thing. You know, going onto the campus, much like Marlon said, Northern State at the time was transitioning to Division II from NAIA. And so I was part of that first recruiting class that came in as they were trying to go to a different level. What I found out a lot while I was there, Ken Heupel was my defensive coordinator there and one of the more highly thought of coaches here in this area. His son Josh went on to play quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. But Coach Heupel was one who always wanted to learn. And it's one thing that I picked up from him. He didn't care if you were black, white, yellow, green, or brown, or whatever. If you had something to offer, he wanted to learn from you. And that was one of the things that I got from him when I got there. He sat me down and we talked about where I was from, the things I was interested in. And we went through this whole thing before we even got to football. And I really appreciated that. And that's what I found a lot of my experiences in Aberdeen to be. And being on the football team at Northern at the time, there were three of us. 3 African-American players. And two of them were from Rapid City, South Dakota. So they didn't really have my growing up experience either. But what I found was a comfort, was an ability to relate because of our athletic feats, because of our football team. And that's one of the reasons I always loved sports, one of the reasons I went into coaching and all those things, because the athletic field is one place where you can kind of get away from that stuff. It allows you to play as one and to be one unit with one common goal. And that's what I found in Aberdeen. And so that really had a positive effect on me. I think if I'd have had a negative experience, probably wouldn't know Mike, because I probably wouldn't have come to Sioux Falls or stayed in the state or any of those things, and probably gone back to Colorado or anywhere in between to find a comfort zone to raise a family in. But really enjoyed my time, really enjoyed my experiences and the people I met.
But then you took it one step further, because apparently being part of 4 wasn't quite small enough group for you. You then became essentially, and this has changed, but at the time, I believe you were the only African-American head coach of any high school sport in the state of South Dakota at the time. Am I correct on that?
That is correct. That is correct. you know, at 23 years old, you don't recognize those types of things. You just, you know, I'm interviewing for a job. I didn't know anything about the place I was interviewing at. Matter of fact, you know, it just goes to speak to our environment, our society. I didn't know anything about Garretson, South Dakota, the town that I still teach in, that I got the head coaching job, and didn't know anything about it. I played semi-pro football here in Sioux Falls, and the first thing I heard about Garretson, South Dakota was from one of my teammates who happened to be from Lenox, South Dakota, and he said, "You don't want to interview there. They don't have people that look like you, and they may not like you." Well, that's not really the thing you want when you have to go the next morning to go do a job interview. That, you know, those aren't the things you want in your head. But I was always taught, you know, you judge people based on your own experiences. You don't judge them based on somebody else's. And so I went ahead and did the interview. One thing led to another. I got the job, and 15 years of coaching there, and now close to 22 years in the district, because I'm still teaching there. You know, some of the best people I've ever met. But being the only African-American head coach in the state does come with a little bit of added pressure. Not pressure that you look at and you say, oh, this is bad, this is whatever. But I did understand that my decision-making and the things that I did would be looked at a little bit differently than my counterparts. And I recognize that probably at the end of my first year, I'm not a big yeller on the sideline. I'm not a big, you know, complainer, you know, hey, I'll bring you over, I'll talk to you. The only time I'm really probably out of sorts is if I feel like one of my players is in some type of danger. If you're not protecting the kids on the field, it's really the only time I kind of lose my cool. But I picked up a 15-yard personal foul for yelling at the official because he just had a terrible call and he wouldn't come talk to me about it. And I told him, hey, you know what? You need to be a man and come over here and talk to me about it and quit walking away and blah, blah, blah. So he threw a flag. And what made me think of that is I sat there and I watched other coaches. This was like the 7th game of the year. For the previous 6 games, I watched other coaches walk up and down the sideline and berate officials and yell at them and call them every name in the book, and not one flag was thrown. Not a single flag was thrown. And so when I got my first one, I kind of sat back and went, wow, that doesn't make any sense. I didn't call him a name. All I wanted him to do was come over and talk to me. He refused to do that, which, as an official, he should, if I requested. And at that point, I kind of sat back and said, you know, the things that I do may add up a little bit differently than my counterparts. And so from that point on, I became very, I guess you'd say very particular about the times in which I chose to go after an official or whatever the case may be. But again, if my kids were in any kind of danger or whatever else, then all bets are off. But, you know, you kind of get to a point where you realize, you know, all eyes are on me, and I need to portray myself not differently, but I need to portray myself in a way that gives a guy like Marlon an opportunity to be a head coach one day, or the kid who right now is in 8th grade to be an opportunity to be a coach one day. I may be the only head coach, just like my students in Garretson, I may be the only African-American they come in contact with for years. What they leave me with, what they leave learning from me, will be what they take into their next experience with the person of color. And so that's how I try to coach. That's how I try to teach. That's how I try to portray myself to my kids. What do I want people to take from me? And I think over the years, having coached that way and done that way, I think I'd like to think that I gained a lot of respect from a lot of coaches and the like. And when they, you know, if you ask them about me, I would hope they'd say some nice things. But you know, just having that idea of being the only person of your ilk in that environment, and trying to figure out what is the best way to go about maneuvering in that environment. Sometimes it can be challenging, but I think if you stay true to yourself, like I tried to, and try to stay with the values that my parents raised me with, I like to think it turned out okay.
And I'm going to take that one step further because Tim won't tell you the entire story. The entire story was, it's his first year as a head coach. He replaced a legend, a guy that had been coaching there 35 years that had like 300 and some wins. And they changed from 11-man down to 9-man football. So that was the trifecta that Tim was against his first year. And yes, he did a marvelous job of it. Hey, I have to get back to another cringeworthy question, and I left this out early. This is for you, Marcia. You're Native American. Do you get a check every month from your tribe?
No, I wish. No, I do a little presentation in my classes. It's called Mythbusters.
Good.
And that's one of the questions that's put in there. It's like, do Native Americans receive monthly checks? And almost everybody thinks we do, whether it be from the federal government or the state or whatever. And now I will tell you that some tribal members will get per capita checks from their tribes for profits made from casinos or stores or whatever economic development they've got on their reservation. But those are, for the most part, only for members who live right there on the reservation. So there are 9 tribes in South Dakota. 8 of them have casinos, and I wouldn't say that they're huge money makers by any means. The only reservation that does not have a casino is mine. So no, we do not get monthly checks.
Yeah, and I can report that the other 9 in South Dakota do not either. So there you go.
Right.
Listen, Marcia, I'm going to start this next one with you because this is a conversation Tim and I have had before. So I'll save his for last in this rotation. And I see we're got about 20 minutes left. As a female, because your experiences are different than ours in so many ways, but as a female Native American, were there conversations that your parents had with you that I never would have had to have with my children?
I would say probably not. And the only reason is because I was largely shielded from a lot of racism growing up. And that was because my dad was a highly, highly successful coach in South Dakota. He was winning state championships in his late 20s and early 30s, and he's won many, 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 many. And he was, very respected for his coaching acumen. He had a master's degree. He was an educated man. He was an athlete himself in high school and college at Augustana. And my mom graduated from high school at the age of 16 as a valedictorian of her class, went on to South Dakota State University, South Dakota State College at that time, and graduated 4 years later at the age of 20. So she was highly successful herself. And I don't know, a lot of people don't know this, but my mom was Mrs. South Dakota, and my mom and dad were both, leaders, beacons in our community, whether it be, through their education careers, working with kids, 4-H, church, Eastern Star, Masonic Lodge, bowling leagues, golf leagues. They were in it all. And so I think because of them, a lot of, and us kids growing up, in the public school system, we did not go to the Indian school. We went to the public school, and that's because we grew up in Flandreau, and the Indian school starts at grade 9. So we've got, 9 years of education before we hit high school. We went to the public school, and I think a lot of you know, the groundwork that my parents laid in that community really kind of shielded us from that, because as kids, we're all very involved in a lot of different things and sports and things like that. So it wasn't until, you know, after I graduated, and that's not to say that there was some name calling, you know, when I was a young girl, and you know, and my mom basically talked to me about it and just said, you know, you really have to just, you know, kind of suck it up, if you will. And that was a long time ago. That was, you know, over 50 years ago, and things are different. I mean, I would never say that to my daughter now. I would never say, you need to suck it up when somebody calls you a dirty Indian. I would never say that now. But things were different back then. And so, you know, they did stick up for me, you know, when things like that happened. But as an adult, I had far more incidences of racism, you know, than I ever did growing up.
We'll get to those in just a second. By the way,
Okay.
Marcia's dad is in the South Dakota Sports Hall of Fame. So when she says successful, she means it. Marlon, I'm going to ask you the same questions. Conversations that your parents had with you, or that you'll have to have with your kids, that I never have had to have with mine.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I grew up in a very, very diverse area. Some of my best men in my wedding was Filipino and Puerto Rican. One's Hawaiian and white, and my brother, other ones. And I grew up in a very diverse area, and it's kind of like the people you knew, and you can trust them and grow up with them. But not to say that we didn't have problems, because every area does have problems. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the East Bay, like San Francisco, Oakland area. We just knew city cops were a little different than our technical sheriff that we had in my town, or the Pittsburgh PD. So we kind of had a different approach. My mom, we did a lot of public transportation, so a lot of it was you respect your community, but you know, if you're on the bus, somebody's going to tell me about it, so you have to do a certain way of life. Police officers kind of knew who we were from the community of playing sports. I'm not to say we didn't have run-ins with them, but my mom did, and my stepdad did teach me at an early age to listen to who's in charge. You know, wrong is wrong and right is right. I can remember we lived not too far from the mall, and this was like a teaching moment of my life, and my mom was like, you guys not going to go to the mall with less than $10 in your pocket. I wish we could go to the mall today and spend $10, but can't do that. But I can remember her telling me, you're not going to go to the mall with less than $10 in your pocket if you can't buy an ice cream or a drink to walk around to show that you're there for a reason. You're probably going to be picked on. So she didn't use those exact words that you were going to be picked on, but she was just trying to tell us, like, you're not the average group of black kids riding scooters or bikes running to the mall, in and out the mall. It's not a good look if you don't have money. And how many kids do we see in Sioux Falls just go to the mall? That's kind of like the meeting hangout area. But for me, it was like, so that was embedded to me until I was older. And when we had those conversations about 13, 14 years old, like, you know, not that you can't go to the mall. It's just that I'm worried if you go to the mall, you're a grown boy, you may not have enough for something, or you may get accused for something, and I don't want to be in a situation, because my mom always worked, where she couldn't be there, or it was just no way of, we didn't have phones at that time. I can remember paying 10 cents per text message. I couldn't text unless I absolutely needed to. So it was just kind of like she just prepared us to make the better choice at all times. And I kind of, it still weighs on me now, because my son, he's 10, and he's like, hey, Dad, just when he was here for the summer, he wanted to go to the fair. I'm like, you go to the fair, you need at least $60. Like, the fair here is a little different, but just to have those conversations with my mom and my stepdad at an early age was great for us, because A, we played sports, and B, the community knew us, and literally somebody was always watching us, always. Like Marcia said, you know, tribe is not just Native American tribe. It literally took the tribe of our community to raise us. And I think with my girls and my son now, like, my girls are obviously black and white. We just talked about it tonight at dinner with my in-laws, like, you know, filling that bubble out. When she fills out a piece of paper, is she going to fill out black or interracial? I don't know. In the next 10 years, they may have that bubble. but my daughter will know that we do Thanksgiving different in California than we do in South Dakota, but there's no difference when it comes to love. Like literally, my mom is her grandmother, and my wife's mom is her grandmother, and they both love each other, and they both look completely different. I mean, we have those conversations about like just the difference of who you are. Her and mom's different, and really, I'm big on structure, so my kids knows that like dad's gonna expect things done, and I feel like if you have some structure, you probably won't have struggles with police, or you probably won't have those worries because you know right from wrong, and you have a routine that you tend to follow. So yeah, I just thank my mom for giving me that lesson of you won't go to the mall with less than $10. What she was basically saying was you don't want to be labeled, you don't want to be in a situation to where you got to try to make a situation work for you or your friends or whoever. So just keep yourself out of trouble. And there were times where I've done crazy things, but I think, you know, the mind frame that she put into us was you're going to be okay if you can listen and have that basic structure. And you don't need more than what you can really get. So, and just listen to people. And like I said, my community was full of everybody, but everybody also knew everybody. It's about 65,000 people, which is a smidget compared to Sioux Falls. But everybody knew everybody. And I mean, not to say we didn't have problems, but yeah, I mean, my mom had those conversations, but she also made us prepared that like, hey, you'll be okay if this happens, and this is what you do in this situation. Never, like I said, we always rode public transportation, so I didn't really have to worry about driving and being pulled over until later on in life. And believe me, if I got a ticket earlier on in life, I probably deserved that ticket. So.
All right, Tim, tell us about growing up in Aurora, Colorado, which actually, excuse me, has lately been in the news. The talk that you had with your folks.
Yep.
That your folks had with you.
Well, like Marlon, you know, Aurora at one time was really, really diverse. We were home to 2 military bases, Fitzsimmons Army Medical Center and Lowry Air Force Base. And so you had kids from all over the world, literally, who I went to school with. So I've got a very diverse friends group that I hang out with, that I still keep in contact with. And so what we faced a lot of times wasn't necessarily a racial profiling, but a socioeconomic profiling. We came from a certain area. And so it didn't matter if it was my friend Mike, who was Hispanic, or my friend Richie, who was Filipino, or Klaus, who was European, or it didn't matter who it was who we were hanging out with. We knew that we could go certain places, but if we went other places, we kind of stood out like a sore thumb. And part of that was, you know, if you went to the Cherry Creek Mall as opposed to the Aurora Mall, the Cherry Creek Mall, you know, you pulled in the parking lot and there were BMWs and Mercedes and Porsches and, you know, maybe a Lambo or two, you know, cars like that. And so when you pull up in your 1978 Toyota Corolla, you kind of don't fit. And so what we learned really is we were more targeted in those areas. And my mom was always one who kind of said, you know, she grew up in Chicago. And she grew up in the era, you know, we talked about 9/11 the other day in my U.S. history class. And I said, well, these are the things, everybody has a moment in their life that gets marked. And you remember where you were when this thing happened. I said, for me, 9/11, and it's the space shuttle exploding, the Challenger explosion when I was a kid. I said, for my mom, it was Kennedy and King and Malcolm X. And then, you know, she had a whole slew of them all the way through. And growing and being in Chicago, it was kind of a powder keg for a lot of those things. And so my mom's viewpoint on things was naturally a lot different than mine. Where I tried to separate myself from my mom's views, is my mom's views were generally skewed towards, you know, you stay with your own, you know, that was her survival tactic then. She's grown a lot since then, and we all grow as we get older and experience, but that was kind of her thing. with us going places was, hey, don't go there. You don't belong there. Well, why don't we belong there, Mom? Why don't we belong there? It's a shopping mall. Why can't we go to the mall? They have a Nike outlet store there. We don't have one here. We just want to get shoes like the other kids want to get shoes. But that was, you know what I mean? That was her way of trying to protect and trying to shield me from what she perceived as danger. For me, as a father, you know, I had those conversations. We've talked about it, Mike. I've had those conversations with my 17-year-old son and my soon-to-be, well, tomorrow, my 20-year-old daughter. Can't believe she'll be that old. But I've had those conversations about what you do when you're stopped, how you need to conduct yourself, how you need to handle yourself. That's not a conversation my mom necessarily had with me. But I felt like, you know, based on my experience, because I was pulled over and was driving my brother-in-law's nice car after graduation. He let me borrow it. You know, they just came from the military. So they got those nice military loans and all that good stuff. So he had a nice car. So he let his young brother-in-law drive the car. And I was really feeling good about myself and got pulled over and, you know, gave my information, told him who the car belonged to, gave him the insurance card, said, hey, this is what it is. This is who it belongs to. My sister's number is blah, 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 blah. And I think I sat there for over an hour as he just continued to question me about, like, I'm giving you everything I have. You can call her. She'll tell you. And I'm 18 years old. So naturally, I don't know what to do. And so I try to use that experience for my son in saying, hey, you know, if you're pulled over, here are the things you need to do. The first thing, listen. Second thing, give them the identification and the things that they need to verify that you are who you say you are. If they need further information, give them my number, give them your mom's number, okay? And let's get to a point where we can come to the scene and get you out of this thing, or they can verify the information they need through your mom or I before things escalate. And I'm not saying that they all escalate, but you want him to be in a position where it doesn't get to a point of escalation. And so I try to use the experience that I had and the fear that I had at the time, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I was in a different neighborhood, to my mom's point. Don't go there, but I was in a different neighborhood and didn't know how that was going to turn out. And I remember that fear, and so I try to use that as a teaching tool, the things that I learned from that experience to impart upon my son and my daughter, talking to them about things, how they should handle situations and those types of things. And so I never really thought I'd had to have a conversation like that. I thought we'd be past that point. But I'm glad that since I had to have it, I can draw on some experience to have that conversation. And hopefully, like I said, we can move the ball forward. So those interactions and those things become a thing of the past. I have many friends who are in law enforcement who are wonderful cops, who sheriff's deputies or police officers or whatever the case may be. They go to work every day and they want to get home to their families. They don't want any problems. And like any profession, like anything in life, it's usually, as I tell my football players over the years, it only takes one of you to screw it up for the other 10. If you're not doing your job, the other 10 get, they lose on the play because you're not doing yours. It's the same concept. It only takes one to screw it up for everyone else. You got 99% of guys doing their jobs the right way, and one of them does it the wrong way. And now everybody gets the label of being the bad guy. And so, if we can share experiences to better things going forward, like I hope my son and daughter have, and my younger son who hasn't started driving yet, but if we can better the experiences based on our experience, then I think that means a lot going forward. So.
All right. Thea, I was taught growing up that it's always easier and frankly, better to leave early rather than to overstay. You're welcome. So I am going to just, we have just scratched the surface. You guys have all been great. I'm going to end, and I want kind of short answers from each one of you, if you don't mind. Marlon, I'm going to start with you. Are we getting better?
I think we are. I know Tim and I always talk about it. Tim and I volunteer, coach with some youth kids, and we had a meeting last week about some tough times that we're facing right now, and our goal is to continue to scratch the surface and keep it going and not just live in a moment. Just want to make sure that this is the same. We're still working at it next year. We're still working at it next week. We're still working at it every single day to get better, because it's not just going to happen overnight. But appreciate everybody in this group. I believe there's 42 people on here, and I really appreciate everybody chiming in. And hopefully somebody can learn from this. And one day at a time, we'll get there. But we'll have some more of these, and hopefully we have some better news.
Tim?
No, just to kind of go off what Marlon said, I appreciate the time. I appreciate everyone joining us. Again, nothing happens overnight. And so, the more conversations can happen, the more we can move the ball and push the envelope and make sure that we're moving the message and creating a better world for all the kids, not just one set of kids, but all the kids. Because I truly believe, as an educator, as a teacher, I look in the hearts of my kids, and it's very hard for me to see the negative in many of them. And I think any teacher will tell you that they're always looking for the best in their kids. And when I look at my kids, they don't look at me as black teacher Mr. Hughes. They look at me as Mr. Hughes and a guy that they trust and they believe in. And I want those feelings to be shared with everyone. So hopefully that is on the path to come.
Marcia?
Well, to answer your question, I would say I'm hopeful. And when I work with youth, I see that they're doing so well. I worked with Native American youth full-time for a year. I recruited seniors to go to the Indian University in North America. And I had a phenomenal time connecting with those high school seniors, those kids, and who were wanting to further their education. So, if we continue to have conversations like this in safe places like this, like you guys have put together this Zoom, and, I think we all feel pretty safe, talking about our experiences and our message or whatever. I'm very hopeful that, we're going to move forward. And I think Tim said it. No, Tim said it. I've always had sort of a deep responsibility to use my education and my experiences as a voice for Native people who do not have that. And so I really appreciate being a part of this. And thank you for everybody who tuned in, and Thea and Mike for organizing everything. And I learned a lot too, so.
Very good. Thanks so much, Marcia. Again, let's give Thea and Stacy a nice round of applause. We greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much for the platform. Let's do this again. All right. This was great. As I said, we just barely scratched the surface, but this was fun. Thank you all so much. I would also encourage you to check out the other OLLI classes. They do a wonderful job. It's well worth enrolling. And but we really appreciate the fact that this one they allow us to do for free. So check them out. Thank you very much. And we appreciate your time. This will be recorded, and we will be sending out links on various social media. So you can follow me on Twitter, Mike Henriksen. You can follow OLLI, USD OLLI, OLLI, and more. So let's share this up. And thanks again, especially Marcia and to Marlon and Tim. This is great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. Everyone, have a great evening, and let's do this again.
Go Coup.
You meant up northern wolves, right?
All right, guys.
Hey, guys.
Thank you.